Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we are back talking college hoops. We have got a big time slate for this Tuesday, so we are here to break it down. We're going to talk about the Tuesday, January 20th slate of college basketball. We're going to tell you who needs to be in or out of your DFS lineups on DraftKings and FanDuel, as well as any leans if you're looking to bet any sides and totals or player props for this slate of games. While you're here, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you can be with us for the rest of our college basketball content all the way through the Final Four, as well as check out all of our golf content that is coming out weekly as well. Now, also, if you would, please help me out. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like button. If you're listening on audio, please rate and review. It really does help me out a ton when you guys do that. I cannot stress enough how much I appreciate it, how much it helps this channel grow, and how much it really does help me. I cannot stress enough how much I appreciate it. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right on in. We got 8 games to break down. Slight correction there, 9 games to break down. I don't really know why DraftKings has been doing the slates how they've been doing them this year. I don't mind them. Like, they've really been grouping up like the 7 o'clock start times on a slate. But here on this slate, like, we've got the weird one game at 6:30 between Minnesota and Ohio State, and then the one game at 7:30 DePaul and Butler. Really, if they wanted to condense it all the way and just do the 7 o'clock games, they absolutely could have. I don't know what drives their selection. I've been applauding their game selection so far this year in the way they've been setting it up, but I don't know. It does feel kind of weird to have the 2 island games when we've got so much this slate starting at 7 o'clock. Anyway, let's talk about that first 6:30 game. Minnesota heading to Columbus to take on Ohio State. Ken Palm has it as Ohio State 77-69. That is a game total of 146 points. Minnesota ranks 106 in offensive efficiency, 66 defensively, and 351st in tempo. So the slow tempo generally means that Minnesota games turn into a slog, not a whole lot of points scored. However, Minnesota is a team that is not terrible for fantasy scoring. They have an incredibly high assist rate, and they're the bottom 10 in the nation in bench minutes. They really only play 5 guys. So while the games themselves might not see a super high total, they have players that can get there from a fantasy standpoint. Ohio State is also a team that is not looking to speed it up. They're ranked 200th in tempo, 68th in defense efficiency, so a little better defense than Minnesota, or about even defense in Minnesota, I should say. And they're ranked 315th in bench minutes. So you're looking at 2 teams that really just play their starters. So that, even though the total's kind of low, even though the tempo is going to be pretty slow, you can feel pretty good about some of these guys getting there. On the Minnesota side, their best player is Cade Tyson. He's up there $8,800, though. I don't want to play him at this price tag going up against Ohio State. You look at his best games since they've been in Big Ten play, and really it was just 41 against USC. Hasn't hit, well, he hit 38 against Northwestern, but he hasn't hit 4X value in any other conference game. So it's really hard to feel good about playing him at $8,800 when he's just not getting there with regularity in conference games. And USC and Northwestern, I think, are much better matchups than this one. So he's probably a pass for me. Oops, I clicked on the wrong button there. And then the rest of the Minnesota side, you've got Isaac Asuma at the point. He is a guy who can really fill up the peripheral stats, but he's not a $7,600 player. Like, DraftKings, I really feel like inflated the price tags of these guys because of the The other guy that you've got to look at is Langston Reynolds. He's kind of their off-ball guard. Again, I just don't think he's a $7,400 player. He will score. He will have big assist games, but he's not the same. I don't even think he's the same tier player as Asuma. He's only $200 less. I just don't really get it. And then Bobby Durkin is the starting center. Plays all the minutes, but doesn't really do a whole lot offensively. Now, on the Ohio State side, Bruce Thornton is $9,900. I consider Bruce every time he's on the slate just because he's a guy who can really, really score, and a lot of this offense goes through him. Incredibly high usage player. But again, kind of like what I said about Cade Tyson, he just hasn't shown the ability to get there for 4X value in conference games at this salary, right? Like, he had 56 against Illinois. He had 42 against Washington. Hasn't gotten a 4X value in any other game in conference play. So until he's cheaper, he's going to be a pass for me. Royal and Mobley, I also feel like, are just way too expensive. Like, they're good players. They can fill up the stat sheet, but I just feel like they're way too expensive for going into a game where it's going to be super slow. Amari Bynum is interesting. He's a freshman. They're really looking to get a lot of touches. Big usage rate guy, big fantasy point per minute guy, and he's been playing a lot of minutes. But again, $6,700. Like, I just don't really feel the need to get there when there's other options on this slate. And then Christoph Tilley is back from injury. He's another guy kind of like Bynum, really good fantasy points per minute player, but you don't really know how many minutes he's going to play because he really loves to get in foul trouble. He also had the injury shortened game against Washington. I don't know. He's probably going to project pretty well. He's probably going to be pretty well liked, but I don't think I can get there. And then you've also got Ivan Jagovin, however you say it. I played him against UCLA because there was supposed to be no Christoph Tilley in game. He played 8 minutes, put up 8 DraftKings points, 7.8 or 7.5. If there was no Tilley, I'd be interested, but now that Tilley's back, I have no interest. Next game, we've got LSU traveling to the Swamp to take on Florida. Florida is projected to win this game 85-74, according to KenPom. That is a game total of 159 points. LSU, good offensive team, 34th nationally. Bad defensive team, 78th nationally and 196th in tempo. Meanwhile, Florida is perfectly balanced, as all things should be, 11th in offensive and defensive efficiency and 58th in tempo. Thing is, with the Gators, they are just an elite rebounding unit right now. They rank top 3 nationally in both offensive and defensive rebounding, and they're also really to play in the same 5 guys, 328th in bench minutes. So let's talk about this LSU side. So there is a bit of injury news to monitor. DeDan Thomas is their best player, their highest usage player. He has been out since December 29th. If he were back, I think I would have interest in a pace-up spot against Florida. He's a big-time assist guy, averages 7 assists a game. He's only $8,200. I don't mind the idea of playing him if he is back, but you do need confirmation that he is back. After that, I'm honestly not really all that interested. Markel Sutton has been really up and down, and I don't like the idea of him going up against this Florida front court right now. Max McKinnon has really been the fill-in for DeDan Thomas. So maybe if you get news that Thomas is out, maybe McKinnon you could have a little bit of interest in at 7,000. I'm not really here for the rest of this team other than that. Pablo Tamba plays all of the minutes, but he's just kind of a cone offensively. Mike Nwoko, transfer from Miami, was killing it early in the season, but since he's gotten into SEC play, has really toned it down. 27 against Texas A&M, 27 against South Carolina, but since then, 17, 8, and 19, not going to cut it, $5,600. And then Rashad King was recently inserted into the starting lineup. I think if DeDan Thomas were out, this could be a value play that you could go to. The last 2 games, he's been at 21 and 16 DraftKings points, 27 and 29 minutes played. I would have a little bit of interest if I knew that DeDan Thomas was out. If DeDan Thomas is in, though, no interest. Now, on the Florida side, they're a really tough team to play in DFS because they've priced up their guys so much, but I think there's still reason to be interested here. So Thomas Houck is the starting small forward now this year as opposed to the power forward. He's had some huge games, but they've kind of all been in like pace-up spots. You know, Providence, Georgia, FSU, like this is not that. So I'm kind of out on him, 8,900. Ruben Chin is turning into one of the nation's best rebounders, and he's playing more minutes than he ever has in his career. And it's showing up from a fantasy perspective. 3 straight games over 37 DraftKings points. I don't think LSU has a natural answer for him. As long as he can stay out of foul trouble, he's going to be a big part of the Florida game plan. And then Alex Condon is another guy from the big spot that can really fill up the stat sheet. He's just really hard to predict, though, and he's really expensive at $8,500. In SEC play, he has not hit, or actually he hit 4x value for that one time against Georgia. I don't know. I'd rather just play Chinyelu. He's been playing the best out of all 3 of those guys. I do like both of their guards, though, Fland and Lee. Fland struggled a little bit against Vanderbilt, only 13 DraftKings points, but prior to that, 3 straight games over 27, peaking at 42. And then Xavier Lee had the breakout game against Vanderbilt in the different jersey number, by the way. He wore 99 in that game because apparently they lost his jersey. And so I really like the idea of going back to Lee. I think he might have actually found something. Kind of the overarching point of this Florida team to the point Vanderbilt game was the fact that their guards had not been effective as last year's team was, and that was really holding them back because, you know, they returned all the same frontline players. And in that game, Lee was great. 2 games prior to that, Flan was great. So I really do think that the guard problem has been fixed. These guys are starting to find their footing, and I'm definitely interested in getting both those guys in my player pool. Next up, we've got Oklahoma traveling to Columbia to take on South Carolina. KenPom has it projected 76-74 in favor of the Gamecocks. Oklahoma ranks 43rd offensive efficiency, 112th in defensive efficiency, and then 223rd in tempo. South Carolina, 88th offensively, 79th defensively, 289th in tempo. Not really a whole lot that stands out on the statistical profile of either of these teams. For Oklahoma, they're a pretty straightforward team in that they really just play through 4 guys. And one of those 4 guys is probably going to go off. Just good luck figuring out which one it's going to be. Xavier Brown has been the guy the last 2 games, really 4 out of the last 5. He's 7,300, so you really want to get 29 DraftKings points at him, but he did that against Alabama. He did that against Ole Miss. Problem is that you're getting him at like ceiling salary right now, and this, I don't know if this is a ceiling matchup or not. So it's a little bit frustrating that he got priced up, but he's been playing really well. Tate Davis against Alabama was a little bit of a letdown. I played a ton of them. He had 23 DraftKings points in that game, but there's not a lot of forwards on any slate that are playing all of the minutes, played 32 minutes or more in each of the last 4 games. Really good rebounder, can also get some assists as well. He's just a super safe, comfortable click at $7,100. Even though he hasn't really shown the ability to get there super consistently, he just doesn't really have bad games, especially now that we've entered SEC play and he's playing all of the minutes. So I do like the idea of getting Tay Davis in my player pool. I do think that South Carolina can be had by forwards, so I don't think that's a bad shout. Nigel Pack, who may or may not be like 30 years old. I think he's like my age. $6,500. Huge game against Texas A&M. Has had 2 duds since then, though, where he just fouled against Florida and then didn't shoot the ball well against Bama, but he took 18 shots. To me, this is like your buy low candidate, even though they priced him up. I thought he was going to get a price decrease after that Bama game. No, they increased it because DraftKings algorithm something, right? So I don't really know why he got priced up after that game, but I'm still buying in on Nigel Pack and, you know, his pedigree of the 7 years I've watched him play college basketball. I think he's just a better player than what he's shown these last few games, and I think South Carolina is a decent matchup. And so at $6,500, I am going to buy back on Pack. Darion Reed is the 4th guy I'm going to mention. He's $6,000, had a huge revenge game against Alabama. Really, with the exception of the Florida game where he was just totally outmatched and got in foul trouble, he's been pretty good once they started conference play. But again, you're getting him at his peak salary because he's coming off of that Alabama game. That is one thing that I do think is worth looking at is like, hey, how are these guys' salaries fluctuating as the year goes by? And we've talked about all season long how Alabama is such a good matchup in DFS because of the tempo they play at, because they're so vulnerable to bigs and give up all the rebounds. And what that's creating is a lot of times guys who play Alabama are then at their peak salary the game after, and that's exactly what you're seeing with Darion Reed and some of these Oklahoma guys. So it does give me a little bit of hesitation to play him, but I do still like Davis and Pack on this side. For South Carolina, Michi Johnson just always seems to be underpriced to me. He's $7,500, which means you want about 30 DraftKings points from him, and he's hit 37 in 3 of the last 4. He plays all of the minutes, big time assist rate, decent rebounder for a guard, and Oklahoma's not this like bad matchup. Like LeBaron Fowler just had a pretty good game against him. So I do think that Michi Johnson, $7,500, very comfortable click. This is a very comfortable game to stack. Even though the total is only 150, that's not super high, but it's not low by any means. So this is a super comfortable game to stack. He's a super comfortable piece to play. Mike Sharp-Jumps has also finally like turned into a solid DFS option in his 4th school in 4 years. Started at Dayton, to San Francisco, went to Utah, and now he's at South Carolina. He's been solid just because of how many ways he can fill up the stat sheet. He's not the highest usage player, but he's got great peripheral rates, and he's got really good side guard spot that allows him to go up and get these boards. He can run the break and get assists. If you're stacking this game, to me, he's the most natural like part of a game stack because he excels in peripherals, and you like peripheral stack guys in games that shoot out. Kobe Knox has also been a guy that now plays all of the minutes, but he's really dependent on his shot, doesn't do a whole lot with the peripherals, so I'm kind of out on him. I got to mention Elijah Strong, though. So he was a big part of my player pool in that game against LSU when he put up 43 DraftKings points. Basically, he just moved into the starting lineup in that Vanderbilt game and was great. That game was great in the LSU game. Has been kind of a miss since, but like he's a supremely high usage player. And the minutes are trending in the right direction, not the wrong direction. Like you look at what he's doing at the start of the season, the minutes are going up, not down. So if he can stay out of foul trouble, $5,200, I've got some interest in Elijah Strong as a GPP target, knowing that he can go out and get you 40. Next game up, we've got Florida State taking on Miami. Miami is projected to win this one 90-76 according to KenPom. That is a game total of 156 points. That makes Miami the highest implied team total on the slate. And the reason why is because of the matchup. Florida State ranks 97th in offensive efficiency, 160th defensively, and 14th in tempo. According to their statistical profile, Florida State is like literally the perfect team to play in fantasy against. They give up a lot of turnovers, but they force a lot of turnovers. They give up a lot of offensive boards, but they get a lot of offensive boards. So, like, there's just fantasy points galore in Florida State games. There just is, right? So, Miami, how can you really combat that? Well, Miami ranks 47th in offensive efficiency, 35th defensively, 87th in tempo. They're an elite rebounding team on both sides. And Florida State has allowed 90-plus points in 3 of their last 4. You got to feel like Miami's going to get to 90. You got to feel like you're going to want a piece of this Miami team. And if you want to go on the other side with Florida State, they've got options as well. Robert McCray V is their lead guard, their best overall player the times I've watched Florida State. And Chauncey Wiggins at 6,200. So, like, his best games have come when they really try to increase the number of possessions and try to play him at the 5 because the other team doesn't have, like, offensive bigs. I don't think that's going to work against Miami. I don't know. I'm just not really seeing it with Chauncey Wiggins. Just not really here for it on this slate. LeJay Jones is I don't know what to make of him. Just his averages end up looking pretty good, but like the actual game log itself is very fluctuating. And I don't know. Maybe if you're playing cash, maybe I don't know. I don't even think that's a good metaphor. Like, he comes off the bench now. There's just not a whole lot to like here. They've put him to the bench in favor of Somerville. Somerville's a freshman that they like a lot. He's $4,900. If the case would be, hey, they put him in the starting lineup, they must like him a lot, they want to get him minutes, then yeah, it makes a compelling case to play him. To me, that would be like the biggest case to play Somerville. They also start Basong and Steen. Steen is 4,400. Just doesn't really do a whole lot in DFS. And then Basong is he's questionable for this one. Did he get hurt in that weight game? Oh, he's listed as probable. That's interesting. I don't know what to make of that. But he did start. They switched up the starting lineup, and he did start. LeJay Jones and A.J. Swinton, as well as Kobe McGee, all coming off the bench now. So for this FSU side, I like McCray a good bit, and I like Somerville a good bit. Probably not playing anybody else when all's said and done. Now, on the Miami side, there's a lot to like, y'all. Malik Reneau, he's so frustrating. Like I said, last week on the live show, basically because he's played college basketball for 9 years, and most of them were at Indiana, he just burned me so many times. There'd be so many times where he'd be in a great spot at a low price tag, and he just let me down. Or so many times where he'd have a great matchup and just let me down. But here this year, he's been pretty good. We talked about him for the slate last week against Notre Dame. He put up 44 DraftKings points in that game. And this is another game where Miami's going to have a rebounding advantage. He's going to be the better athlete than whoever Florida State puts out on the floor at the 4 and the 5. I like him a lot at $9,400. I think he's one of the better pay-up options on the slate. Trey Donaldson is kind of your team stack play, right? Like, you look at his DraftKings point totals, they're very correlated to Miami's actual team totals. For instance, against Clemson, Miami scored 59 points. Trey Donaldson had 10 DraftKings points. Against Notre Dame, Miami scored 81. He had 38. Against Georgia Tech, Miami scored 91. He scored 51. Against North Florida, Miami scored 105. He scored a 47. You get the picture. He's just a great team stack player because of what he does with his assist rate. I like him a lot. I also love Shelton Henderson on this slate. He's a freshman who is really just a slasher elite at getting to the rim, and Florida State has no rim protection. I think this could be a really good game for him at 7,000. I do think the price tag is a little inflated. It's the highest we've seen him at since November, but I do think that this matchup is just great. Like, I definitely think you're going to want to get multiple Miami pieces on your team. Ernest Uday is kind of like, he is what he is. you're getting a guy who just doesn't do a lot offensively, but just can absolutely board. Like, you look at his game log, with the exception of the Notre Dame game where he got in foul trouble, double-digit rebounds in 5 of the last 6, excluding that Notre Dame game. So he's an option, but I generally don't like paying up like into the 6K, 7K range for guys who don't score, and he don't score. He was also helped big time by Renew foul trouble in that Clemson game. So maybe if you're fading Renew, maybe playing Uday would be a good idea. I definitely wouldn't play both of them together. True Washington is another starting guard for this team, but he is overpriced at $5,400 based off what his role is right now. Dante Allen, 6-man, $4,500. If you think Miami scores 100, he could be worth a shot. All right, that is 4 games down. We're going to take a quick breather, and then we're going to get on with the rest of them. Before we continue, I do want to mention there are places where you can get more information from me. First off, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. It's where I tweet out all updates for the show, as well as I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you just reach out to me on Twitter. I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. Link is in the description on YouTube as well as on the audio feed. If you are looking for a community to be a part of that just talks DFS all the time, talking lineups, talking strategy, talking plays, as well as we got a few guys who are really in tune with injury news and who's in and who's out of lineups, that's the place to go. It's just a great community to be part of. Cannot recommend it enough. And we don't just talk college basketball. We got all the other sports covered in there as well. And then if you want to know who actually makes my college basketball DFS lineups, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. For every single college basketball DFS slate, I have a full article with my core plays and a write-up as to why they are my core plays. So you're not just getting an information in list form. You're getting a full write-up, full detailed breakdown of why they make the core. All right, let's go ahead now and dive back into the coverage. The 5th game up on this slate is NC State traveling to Clemson to take on the Tigers. Ken Palm has this one 75-71 in favor of Clemson. That is a game total of 146 points. Both these teams are about even, so I really think that's factoring in like home field advantage or home court advantage, I guess I should say. I like NC State in this game. I've already picked NC State in this game. NC State ranks 30th or 37th in offensive efficiency, 40th in defensive, and then 99th in tempo. Meanwhile, Clemson 66 offensively, 14th defensively, and 313th in tempo. So Clemson is just not a good matchup with that combination of elite defense and slow tempo. But there are some guys and some angles that we can take on this NC State team. For instance, Trey Holloman, down here at $3,800. I don't know what DraftKings is doing. He's back from injury. He played 18 minutes against Georgia Tech, put up 17 DraftKings points. Y'all, anytime you got a guard that's putting up a fantasy point per minute or more, that's really good. Like, really good. It's hard for guards to do that. And with Holloman, he's 3,800. If he just plays 18 minutes again and does that again, you're going to be happy. So I like the idea of going back to him. And also, I think just generally watching NC State, I think he's better than Allen Breed, who has been starting in place of Holloman ever since Holloman got hurt. And so I kind of like the idea of just going right back to Holloman. He's definitely going to be a big part of my player pool here in this slate. The other guys that I do like for State, Darion Williams has been so up and down this season, but I really like the matchup for him going against Clemson's front court. I just think he's a better athlete than they are, and I think that they're not exactly equipped to guard a guy like him. And we've seen the upside for Williams, 44 against FSU. Granted, that was, the best matchup in the ACC, but there's definitely a path to upside here at $7,900. He's definitely going to make the player pool. Quadir Copeland is $7,700. He is actually turned into like the highest usage player on this NC State team, kind of acting as the point guard. The Trey Holloman injury was kind of the catalyst to that, because ever since then, he has been 31, 25, 38 DraftKings points, and that 25 was when he only played 18 minutes against Florida State when he got in foul trouble and then got a technical foul. So he's definitely a guy that I'm interested in at $7,700. As long as he doesn't get in foul trouble or get technicals in this game, I can feel pretty good about him hitting value. And then Van Allen Lubin is the starting center for this team. I don't really know what to make of him. It's been that way all 4 years he's played. I don't really know if he's a center. I don't know if he's actually a good rebounder. I don't know if he's a good interior defender, but yet he blocks shots. He's an enigma, but he's $6,500 and he's shown upside to hitting value, and he's definitely going to be a better athlete than this Clemson front court. Matt Abel is also a guy at $4,600 who was playing a ton when Trey Holloman was hurt. Hasn't since he got back. I like Abel. I think he's going to play in the NBA, but probably not interested until we can see that minutes start to tick back up. And then Terrence Arsenault, transfer from Houston. He's $4,200, 3 straight games of over 16 DraftKings points. Does he need Holloman to be hurt to do that? Does he need Copeland to get in foul trouble to do that? I mean, maybe, but $4,200, it doesn't cost a lot to find out. And he was supposed to be a big-time player at Houston before he transferred. On the Clemson side, they're just a tough breakdown, man, because you got Dylan Hunter here at 6,200, who's like the peripheral stat king, not an actual high usage player, though. Doesn't take a lot of shots, doesn't have a lot of stuff drawn up for him offensively, which is kind of frustrating. But he plays all the minutes and he gets a ton of peripheral stats, great rates in that regard. So what's going to happen here? Once he takes a big-time pace up, they're an okay defensive matchup. I mean, maybe. Welling is a guy that is a high usage player, and generally he wasn't a very high minutes player, but the last 2 games he's averaging 30 minutes, and he's put up 30 DraftKings points. Like I said, NC State, I don't think they're a good interior defense. I don't think they're a great rebounding team. Welling could be a guy that could take advantage of that if he can stay on the court, and meaning he stays out of foul trouble. And I like him at $6,100. Justin Porter is interesting. I think he's a good GPP target. He takes a lot of threes. If he were just have a game where he makes them, he could end up being pretty good for you. But you see in the game log, there's a lot of volatility, a lot of variability. I wish he was cheaper. And then RJ Godfrey is kind of their power forward. He's going to be tasked with guarding Darion Williams. I think $5,700 is a reasonable price tag for him, but I just don't know if I'm going to get there. And then Nick Davidson is kind of the backup to Welling, but they will play him and Welling at the same time. It's weird. And so I don't really know what. I think he's overpriced at $5,500. Like earlier in the season, we were playing him at like $4,000, and I liked him when he was there. All right, next game up, we got Seton Hall traveling to what borough is St. John's in? I know Madison Square Garden's the arena. Is it Manhattan? Are they in Manhattan? I don't know. Anyway, St. John's projected to win this game 77-68 according to Ken Palm. That is a game total of 145 points. Seton Hall is not the type of matchup you want to play in DFS. They rank 10th nationally in defensive efficiency and 259th in tempo. The good news is for Seton Hall is that they're going to be paced up big time in this game. St. John's 48th in tempo, but 20th in defensive efficiency. So this is a game that you've got 2 really good defenses going up against each other. You would really be hoping that the tempo of this game is what carries it. On the Seton Hall side, they play a super weird rotation, especially with their big men. But Najee Hines had a huge game against Butler. I would be inclined to believe that you got to get a guy like him more run coming off of that game. 39 DraftKings points in that game against Butler. When he's out there, he's a pretty high usage player. I don't mind the idea of getting to him, but I mean, I always am cautious about playing a guy at his ceiling price after a ceiling performance. And St. John's is a very good interior defense. Adam Bud Clark is the guy that I'm the most interested in for Seton Hall. He got in foul trouble in that game against Butler. He is the guy that the straw that stirs the drink for the offense. Big time assist player, can get rebounds as well, can score also. I like him a lot at 6,100, especially in a pace-up game. I'm going to go right back to him. He was a core play for mine on Saturday, and if he just doesn't get in foul trouble, which St. John's doesn't have any guards that should get him in foul trouble, then he should be fine. He should have a really big game. AJ Stat McRae was kind of the best offensive player for this team at the start of the season. And then he kind of had gotten phased out at the start of Big East play, but the foul trouble to Clark kind of led to like this renaissance performance against Butler, 23 DraftKings points. Is it going to have any staying power into this game? TBD. But really on this side, they play so many different guys that those are the only 3 guys I really have any interest in. It might just end up being Clark for my player pool. On the St. John's side, they've been super weird this year because they don't have a point guard. They just don't. And so it creates an interesting dynamic of like who to play because all the guys that they have are kind of like responsible for generating their own fantasy points in a way, right? So Zuby Ejiofor, the big man, they play through him. He's a usage leader on the season. I think he's overpriced 9,700. You look at the biggest games he had, Providence and Georgetown. Those were both small teams in pace-up spots. Seton Hall is not small. Seton Hall is not a pace-up. So I don't think this is a good spot for him at that inflated price tag. Bryce Hopkins is a guy who has been a steady, consistent performer, but this is like the worst matchup he's had in terms of pace, in defensive prowess. I don't think this is a good spot for him, and he's at the highest price tag he's been at in quite a while at 7,000. So I'm kind of out on Hopkins for this slate. Dylan Mitchell's been pretty good lately. They moved him out of the starting lineup, only to move him back into the starting lineup. And in the last 2 games, he's put up 27 and 30 DraftKings points. I think there's a little bit of interest there for me. Josiah Sellers, 6,400. He has been operating as the point guard for this team, and it's had some highs like 34 and 33 against Creighton and Marquette. But in a matchup that was more typical of what he's going to see here in this one against Villanova, he still played 30 minutes, but he only put up 16 DraftKings points. That's kind of annoying, right? Like, you would expect more from what his role had been turning into than that. And now he's taking on Seton Hall. Good defense, pace down spot. Don't think this is the time to play him at that price tag. And then Ian Jackson has been kind of this hot and cold enigma. He actually had a few games where he operated as their starting point guard. No longer. Could he give you a good game? Yeah, you just never really know what you're going to get from him. All right, 3 games to go. Next up, we've got Indiana taking on Michigan. KenPom has this one projected to be 88-73 in favor of the Wolverines. That is a game total of 161 points, which is the highest on the slate. This is an interesting one because Michigan is kind of in a little bit of a tail slide. They have not been as good in the recent games as they were at the start of the season when they looked just like an absolute buzzsaw. But I also think Indiana is like a great matchup for them. Indiana as a team ranks 42nd in offensive efficiency, 52nd in defensive, and then 188th in tempo. But Indiana is not very big. Indiana does not defend the paint very well, which is a problem if you're up against Michigan because that's one of the biggest, most dominant paint teams in the country. Michigan, for the record, 5th in offensive efficiency, 2nd defensively, and then 10th in tempo. So this is a pace-up spot for Indiana. So if you're trying to talk yourself into playing Indiana guys, the argument would be, well, it's a pace-up spot. And what if the guys from the perimeter just get going, right? Like, I definitely don't have any interest in playing any of the bigs, DeVries, Bailey, Alexis. No thanks. Not going to play bigs going up against Michigan unless I have to. So the perimeter guys. Could Wilkerson get there? Absolutely. He did against Nebraska. You know, he shot a ton of shots. He put up a ton of stats. Could he do it? Yeah, because that's how you have to beat this Michigan team. So I think at $9,000, I think he's an interesting GPP play. Will he actually make my player pool? TBD. But it's a pace-up spot with a team that has to be attacked from the perimeter, and he's going to attack from the perimeter. Tatum Connerway is the peripheral stat king for this Indiana team. Could he get there? I say yes. I like that we're getting a depressed price tag for Connerway for a guy that is a big peripheral stat guy in a matchup that is going to be a pace-up. I think that that's just generally good practice to play guys in that situation. And then the other guard that plays a ton is Connor Enright, but he hasn't done a whole lot lately. He's kind of a code offensively. If he hits his three-pointers, it's going to be a good day. If he doesn't, you're going to wish you hadn't played him. Now, on the Michigan side, this is so interesting. The counter argument against Michigan on this slate would be like, well, what if Indiana is like so small that Michigan can't play their bigs because of like the spacing? I don't think that's going to happen, but I definitely think when it comes to Michigan and their 3 bigs, I definitely only want to play one of them. That's been a pretty good practice for me so far this season, is to not play more than one of the Michigan bigs. But generally speaking, they all end up in my player pool. So let's break all 3 of them down. Starting with Yaxel Lendeborg. He's probably the team's best player. Came over from UAB, played the 4 and the 5 there. Now he is playing the 3 most of the time for Michigan. He's just a really good athlete, really good player, like high usage guy. Cannot stress enough that he's kind of been a disappointment in DFS. Like, since the calendar turned to 2026, he is not top 30 DraftKings points in a game. But Indiana would be a team he could do it against because they're just going to be bigger and smaller and less athletic than him. So could we get a Yaxel ceiling game? Absolutely. Morris Johnson Jr. is probably the most traditional of the bigs in terms of he's a really good rebounder, really good paint protector. I think he's a little pricey at $7,800, like you're paying for his ceiling. He's definitely the least consistent of the 3 Michigan bigs. Ade Mara is actually probably the most consistent, but like he doesn't play a whole lot of minutes. He's basically like Spanish Boban Marjanovic. He doesn't play a ton of minutes, but when he's out there, he's such a fantasy point per minute monster. And Indiana is a team that just has nothing to hold up to him. I think he could dominate. And the argument with him is, well, how could he put up so many DraftKings points if he doesn't play that many minutes? Well, ceiling game against Oakland, 40 DraftKings points in 20 minutes. Against Wake Forest, he played all 37, but he put up 55. There's just paths to him getting there in lesser minutes. And then what if they actually do decide to play him boosted minutes because he's dominant? They can't take him off the court, right? So Mara is a guy that finds himself into my GPP player pool a ton because he's such a good fantasy point per minute player that even though the minutes aren't guaranteed, what if you do get the minutes? Because even when he doesn't get the minutes, he can still hit 4x value. So I just like Mara a lot. I do. From the guard spots for Michigan, Cadeau is really the only guy you can have any interest in. He's a big peripheral stat guy, massive assist rate. He's priced reasonably at 5,900. I generally put him in my player pool every time Michigan's on the slate because, kind of the same argument with Mara is there was a large portion of the season where Michigan was just beating the brakes off of teams, right? And none of their guys are playing full minutes. And now if he is playing full minutes, he's got upside to put up a lot of fantasy points because he does so much in the peripheral stats. So I really do like Elliot Cadeau. He's probably going to make my player pool just at first glance. Next up, we've got UCF heading to Ames to take on Iowa State. KenPom has this one projected to be Iowa State 84-72. That is a game total of 156 points. On the UCF side, they rank 41st in offensive efficiency, 66th defensively, and 102nd in tempo. Iowa State, they're in a bit of a skid, but they still rank 13th offensively, 8th defensively, and 162nd in tempo. Sorry for the yawn, y'all. I'm quite tired at this point. So UCF is a big pace up for Iowa State. That makes me really interested in playing the Iowa State guys, but more on them in a second. For UCF, Iowa State's such a good defense that it really does make them a tough matchup and a tough click to play guys against. And the way that things have worked out with the pricing for UCF, they just got some really tough clicks, right? Like Themis Folks he's the point guard. He's been great for them, over 8 assists in each of the last 3 games. 51 and 42 DraftKings points in each of the last 2. Big time usage guy, big time peripheral stat guy. But the last 2 games for UCF have been big time pace up spots. This is not a pace up spot. This is a really good defensive team they're going against. So why would I pay him at his high price tag of the season in a by far worse matchup than the last 2? I'm just not going to get there. Riley Kugel, he's kind of like a better version now than he was his first 3 seasons in college basketball, which is a super volatile scorer rebounder that is a good GPP play. And I would not fault you for playing him in any GPP anytime he's on the slate. But now you're paying a lot more to do it because he's 7,400. Because like I said, he's coming off of 2 really good matchups. The injury news we do have to monitor here is JaMychal Stillwell. He is doubtful to play. And I don't really know what they do if he is out because we don't really have a viable sample size of games that he missed this season. So Jordan Burks kind of plays the 4 for them. He could be a candidate to see boosted minutes. He played a ton of minutes against Arizona, put up 26 DraftKings points. And then also Devin Cambridge would also be a candidate to play boosted minutes as well. But he's been really inconsistent, really hot or cold, really hit or miss. So Burks normally starts, so you wouldn't get any news that it could be a Burks game until after the game starts, right? But if Stillwell is out, I would be super interested to see who ends up in the starting lineup in his place. To me, that would be the most likely way I would play UCF guys. If we figure out who's going to start, whether it's Cambridge, or whether they go small and try to play Chris Johnson, maybe I just don't really know what they're going to do with that spot. I think the most logical conclusion is Cambridge, but I don't know what they're going to do with it. I wish I did. All right, now on the Iowa State side. So Iowa State is an example of the opposite of some of the teams we talked about on the slate, where they're coming off of slower pace down games, tough matchups, and now they are at home in a pace up spot against a much better matchup. So you're getting some of these guys at lower price tags with a good matchup from where they were. So Josh Jefferson, the last 3 games haven't been great, y'all, but he's a point forward at the 4 spot, can put up a ton of stats in a hurry, in a pace-up spot. I love the idea of playing him, even though he is $10,000. I hope that a lot of people look at the game log and don't want to play him, and we can get him at lower ownership. Milan Momcilovic is a guy I generally don't play, though, because he's just so dependent on scoring. He doesn't really do a whole lot else other than scoring. If he scores, 34 like he did against Cincinnati, you're going to want him. But like, it's really hard for a guy, if you fade him, to bury you in DFS if all they're doing is scoring, because he's kind of just capped with a ceiling, right? Like, he's never going to have huge games until he starts contributing in other ways. I also love Tamin Lipsey on this slate at 6,900. He has been much better this season at home as opposed to on the road. He has a super consistent role in the offense. He has a super high floor. And with it being a pace-up spot, with him being a big-time peripheral stat guy, I just don't really see a way in which he burns you on this slate. Like, he's probably going to get you at least 25 DraftKings points, and you'll be content with that. And then if he goes for 35, then you're going to be really happy with that, right? So I really like Lipsey. I just really, really like him on this slate. I think he's in a great buy low spot. Killian Torre is also a guy who's in a pretty good buy low spot. He's been in foul trouble the last 2 games. If he could stay on the court, you could absolutely get a performance from him like he had against Oklahoma State or like he had against Baylor. We put up at least 29 DraftKings points in both of those. I think he's worth a look as well. That's probably all I got from this team. Last game of the day, like I said, I don't know why this is on the DraftKings slate. DePaul taking on Butler. Starts at 7:30 Eastern time, which is 30 minutes after every other game on the slate, which, like I said, is kind of annoying. So anyway, KenPom has this one projected to be 79-70 in favor of Butler. That's a game total of 149 points. DePaul, hey, they're not the worst team in the Big East anymore. That now belongs to Georgetown and Ed Cooley. DePaul ranks 191st in offensive efficiency, 51st in defensive efficiency, and 206th in tempo. That makes them not a great matchup. But on the other side, Butler kind of is 67th offensively, 75th in defensive efficiency, and then 61st in tempo. So it's a big time pace up spot for DePaul. And what you've seen in recent games for DePaul is like they really play through their big 3. CJ Gunn is kind of like Milan Momcilovic for Iowa State, but a little bit different. If you've seen them play, you'll know why. He's $7,100. He is very much primarily a scorer, doesn't do a whole lot with the peripherals. Against Butler, could he have a big game? Yeah, but like, I just don't really. Oh, wow. I'm sorry. I'm watching the Indiana-Miami game, and Indiana just scored. So I'm not the biggest fan of CJ Gunn on this one. I really do like Leighton Blocker. He is their starting point guard. He is not the biggest scorer, but he can have big games with rebounds, with assists, in addition to the scoring. Last 5 games, which has gone back to December 31st, he's been over 25 DraftKings points in every game. So he's kind of like Tamin Lipsey in that I just don't feel like he's going to kill you. And I feel like you're looking at a matchup against Butler here with it being a pace up that puts him in a pretty good spot. And so I really do like the idea of getting to him. Brandon Macklin has also been a guy who has really elevated recently. He comes off the bench, but like he plays starters minutes. And so he's been over 25 DraftKings points in the last 3. He's only 6,400. Definitely here for some Brandon Macklin here on this slate. And then the last guy I'll mention is NJ Benson. He is their starting big. He's their best big. I do think Butler can be had by bigs. So 58 or 6,300 for NJ Benson. Got a little bit of interest there. And then I will mention Caleb Banks because he just randomly has some big games. You never really know when it's going to be. He's only $4,100. Like, if you're playing a ton of lineups in GPPs, I wouldn't fault you for putting him in the player pool. If you're running projections or running an optimizer, it probably likes him because of the ceiling that he's shown earlier this year. But it's kind of a tough click unless you're playing a ton of lineups. On the Butler side, like I said, DePaul's not a great matchup for them, but they've got some guys that are playable, and really I just mean 2. Michael Ajayi, transfer from Gonzaga. Double-double machine, averages 16 and 11. This is a spot where he could do that. I wish he wasn't $9,800. If he was $8,800, I'd be all over him. Because at $9,800, you really want him to get to 40, and he hasn't shown the ability to do that consistently in Big East play, especially in a pace-down spot. So don't know if I'm getting there on him. And then Finley Bizjack, their second-best player. He's much closer to Milan Momcilovic than CJ Gunn is. He's $6,200. He put up 32 in the last game against Seton Hall, which is a really tough matchup. But yeah, all he does is score. So if you fade him, it's just not likely he's going to bury you because he's just like his ceiling is kind of capped because all he does is score. So I don't know if I'm going to get to anybody from this game, if I'm being honest. I think Blocker, Macklin, and Benson I might have in the pool. But I'm not really interested in heavily interested in anybody on the Butler side. Kaiser is like this corner 3-point shooter. Drayton Jones is their big man, but he's kind of fallen out of favor. Like, just there's not a whole lot to love here, man. But anyway, that's going to do it here for this 9-game slate. Hopefully we gave you guys all the news you need, all the information you need in order to build some winning DFS lineups on DraftKings and FanDuel, as well as some winning player prop bets and sides and total bets on these games. Hopefully we're able to give you guys all of the goods. If we did help you out, make sure you hit that like button if you're watching on YouTube, and rate and review if you're listening on audio. And that's going to do it here for this episode, y'all. Make sure you're subscribed. That way you can be with us for the rest of our content all the way through the rest of the season. We're going to have some more live episodes like we did last week as well. If you're subscribed, you will know when we go live. So that is my one piece of advice, my one endorsement, to subscribe. But anyway, that's going to do it here for this episode, y'all. If you want more from me, follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, check out the articles on the Patreon. But that is going to do it here for this episode. Thank you guys for watching and listening to this point. Best of luck to you guys on the Tuesday slate, and I will see you guys next time.